to welcome the Minister here, but to say fair play to the activists and Senator Norris and Senator Boyhan and indeed Deputy John McGuinness and all other people who have made it possible for us to be discussing this bill here. I acknowledge its attempts to stop the tide of citizens and families being turfed out on the streets, and I think it was apt earlier when Senator Norris talked about evictions, because that's what it is. And the question for us as legislators is, and the question for government is this going to be the government that continues to condone evictions? And I, or my party certainly cannot stand over that. Now, it's not a perfect bill, but we don't deal with perfect bills. We get bills and we do our best to make them perfect through stage after stage of scrutiny and debate. And I welcome the fact that Senator Norris and Senator Boyhan have both said that they will welcome amendments and changes to this. But today it's all about the principles and the spirit of the bill, and that is the spirit I am very happy to support. My party has brought legislative proposals before aimed at giving borrowers a chance at least. For example, our Land and Conveyancing Reform Bill in 2013 could have made a huge difference, but sadly that was rejected. And since then, the same old government line has triumphed. The banks must come first, the borrower, the consumer's rights and the rights of fairness is bottom of the list, and the banks must come first. We see this in delays in dealing with tracker mortgages and indeed the battle and what I would count as the crime of tracker mortgages. The rural closures, again the AIB flotation, all of those things in terms of the attitudes of the banks and the banks never being reined in to be held accountable. And we see that in the Finance Committee ourselves in terms of inviting the banks to come in. We see in the last number of weeks even, they have refused to come before us. The excuse of the part flotation of the AIB has been used, and all of the other banks have trotted out the same lines that they won't come in for a number of months. And I certainly don't think that that's acceptable. But this is the mentality that has us here in this situation, and it must change. Michael Noonan, as Minister, rolled out the red carpet to the vulture funds. Indeed, it's just this time last year at the economic dialogue that I put to him exactly had he quantified the amount of money that was lost through the sweetheart deals that he was given to vulture funds, and he never addressed the matter. He saw them as being a solution, and I certainly never agreed with him in this. They are part of the problem. But vultures don't kill, they just prey on the carrion. These funds actively kill off small businesses and attack homeowners. They are the predators, not the vultures. There is a thing in Ireland, as was said earlier on, about land and home ownership that I think that we should cherish. But there is also a thing in Ireland of corruption, cronyism and protection of the golden circle. And when we look at the 67 billion that was given to these banks that we're here to talk about today, that we're trying to protect citizens from, and the fact that we are paying, and we forget this, the fact that we are paying 7 billion and more every year just to service that debt. That is 7 billion that could be used on physiotherapy services, other health services and many other services that people are in desperate need of around this country. But they've got away with it. We are all very clear they have got away with it, and they continue to get away with it. And that's why what we are discussing here today is so important. There are some of us who tell us that we have a low rate of repossession in this country, but that ignores the so-called voluntary surrenders, but more importantly, it ignores the context. The context is that these same banks have wrecked the country, as I said, destroyed the economy and made tens of thousands of people unemployed and have forced people to immigrate. And we talk now as if everything is okay and we have full employment, and yet I come from an area that has 30% plus unemployment. How can we explain that? And again, the banks have got away with it and the huge part that they have played. Now, as these people try to recover, those banks come knocking on the door saying that we owe them. I think we have it backwards. In a normal context, this bill would be unnecessary. There will always be a small number in society, as was alluded to earlier on, through bad luck, who fail to pay their mortgages, and a number of people who can pay but won't pay. And the possibility and the threat in the case of the latter must be there to apply to that. But when we have a societal and economic issue of this scale, then a different approach is needed. And the Conservative powers in this state simply cannot contemplate that type of action, and that is the crux of the problem. Even in the limited actions they promised, they are not happening. The review of the thresholds and the processes for the personal insolvency arrangements, including SMEs, and to raise that where appropriate, that was promised. The establishment of a dedicated new court, again, that has not happened. Work with the central bank to amend the code of conduct on mortgage arrears, that has not happened. Any of those things have not happened because the banks must come first. These banks are not and have never been held to account. It is excruciating to witness the arrogance of these banks and the benign attitude of the government towards their behaviour. They couldn't care less about Irish citizens. They know that there are no sanctions. They know that the close-knit elite will not bring their friends to account. They know that there's no sanctions for white-collar crime in this country. They have all the evidence of it, even in recent weeks. Now, there are questions about the initial financing and the way this co-op would operate, and we will need to see more information as the bill progresses. There will be a lot of work done to iron out the concept into a real living entity, but my party is prepared to put that in that hard work along with others. This is a societal and economic issue. It's not just a banking one, even though we've concentrated on the banks today, but we have a duty to act, and we must act responsibly, and we must consider the full consequences of our actions. This bill should progress, and Sinn Féin supports it at this stage. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you, Senator.